Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for being here this morning to hear about our new plan and proposal, A Better Way to a Safer Connecticut. We all deserve to live in a state where people feel safe. Picture living in a place where you feel safe walking alone to your car at night, filling up at a gas station, picking up your child from school, or even just cooking dinner in your kitchen. It's heartbreaking that this picture is not a reality for far too many people in our state today. Hartford is on pace for one of its deadly years in decades, with 29 murders reported as of October 2nd, a 61% increase. New Haven murders are up 37.5%, and shots fired are up 122% since 2019. The number of homicides in Connecticut increased 31% in 2020. Car thefts in Connecticut rose 42.5% from 2019 to 2020, and that number continues to increase every single day. In Waterbury, murder is up 28.6% and auto theft up 23%. The Waterbury police chief, joined by many others, is calling on lawmakers for help to do their job. We need immediate action to properly respond to crime. We need to ensure law enforcement and our justice system have the tools to keep all people safe. But it's so much more than just that. We also need action to prevent crime, to end the cycle of juvenile injustice and a lack of opportunity that pushes people, especially our young people, toward crime. We cannot ignore that Connecticut is dead last in job growth and income growth, and that Connecticut's economy is failing our children and failing our cities. We need to build a ladder out of poverty. We need good-paying jobs. We need safe housing, and we need to empower communities to thrive as a state. We are here today to share a plan that offers a better way to a safer Connecticut. A safer Connecticut, though, starts with a stronger Connecticut. It starts with an economy that can support jobs, build hope, and create a path to success. It starts with proactive policing, appropriate accountability for repeat offenders, and ensuring our justice system has the tools to successfully rehabilitate. It starts with meaningful and positive role models for our youth. These holistic ideas are meant to advance the conversation and open a door to action. At this point, I would like to allow Senator Formica to explain how we developed the plan and where we got our input from community. Senator? Thank you.
Good morning. When we first began to see this uptick in crime, we immediately got together to get to work on some solutions. Not just by talking amongst ourselves as a caucus behind closed doors, but by going out into the community. We had proposed bills earlier this year to address juvenile crime and car thefts in particular, but when we saw the numbers coming out this summer, we heard day after day about murders, violence, and escalating crime. It became increasingly clear that the issue is so much deeper. We know the solution to stopping crime is not going to come from a bunch of politicos sitting under this golden dome. We'll have conversations together, but solutions must come with input from our communities, input from social workers and experts in the justice system, input from juvenile advocates and police, and input from victims and from community leaders. That's why over the last few months we have been out in our communities, in cities and towns across the state, talking to people who work with juveniles each and every day. Talking to our police, talking to community leaders about what has worked and what has not, what has failed, and where should we go from here. I want to thank the many individuals and organizations that the senators and our staff have had the privilege of speaking with over the last few months, and for sharing so freely their time and talents and thoughts. These conversations have led to the holistic proposals that we share with you today. So for further on those proposal overview, the ranking member of Judiciary, Senator John Kissel.
Thank you, Senator Formica. I'm State Senator John Kissel, and I serve about 100,000 folks in north central Connecticut. I've been tremendously honored to be on the Judiciary Committee for the last 27 years, well over a decade as the ranking senator and a couple of years as one of the tri-chairs when the Senate was evenly split. I think Senator Kelly used the precise word. The approach that Senate Republicans are taking is holistic. In other words, we're not saying that this is all about juvenile car thefts or related juvenile crime, although that is clearly an area that needs addressing, and it needs addressing immediately. But Senate Republicans, and I want to again agree with my colleagues, Senator Formica and Senator Kelly, in praising our staff and the rest of my colleagues who have worked so tirelessly on this proposal, is that we've broken it down into three subsets. Essentially, we want to address reforms to juvenile crime. That's the first part, specifically, and I'll get to that in a second. Secondly, we want to address jobs and housing. And third, we feel that reforms that took place regarding law enforcement went way too far, and that some of them need to be rolled back. And also, we need to look at new areas where we can bolster law enforcement's ability to address issues regarding crime. So regarding juvenile justice first. If it's a domestic violence arrest, that individual is brought before the court within 24 hours or the next day, next available day before the court. We feel without a lot of effort, the judicial system could accommodate juvenile crimes charged and have those matters picked up by the court system, the juvenile courts, and have that start in the judicial process the next day. There's no reason to wait 2 weeks, and what I've heard over the meetings that I've had, and just to take a quick step back, we started along this path in part bipartisanly in the summertime, and that sort of broke down. But we did have several meetings. But what we learned was that quite often on these juvenile arrests, they're released within 6 hours by law. They won't be before a judge for 2 weeks. And quite often, they have a public defender, and they will ask for a 2-week continuance. That means that young person's out for about a month before anybody in authority addresses the underlying crime, and quite often other crimes take place in that period of time. And if one believes in turning lives around, and we have support services that can do that, we suggest that at that initial assessment, when they're immediately brought into the court system, we look into their family history, their criminal record, if any, what kind of other support services they need, education, tutorials, things like that. So we need to get our arms around these young people. It's not all young people by any stretch of the imagination, but there is this growing group of individuals that know the system does not work, and they continue to ratchet up and take advantage of that. And we need to really nip that in the bud right now. We can't wait. And throwing money at law enforcement will not address this. We need substantive change, and there are further reforms regarding juvenile justice that we're championing, all the way down to ankle bracelets, being able to monitor in real time, not just 9 to 5 as our state contracts currently allow, but if it's in the after hours, we don't really have the ability to pinpoint an individual's location. We have to circle back the next day, things like that. Let me get to part 2, and then I'm going to turn it over to my leadership who've done such a fabulous job. Part 2 is jobs and housing. Okay, the vocational schools and other areas where we can allow these young people to access what we have institutionally and supported financially, but are really not being utilized to their potential. There's jobs out there. You can't go almost anywhere in Connecticut without seeing a help wanted sign. It's not like we're living in an environment where young people can't get into the marketplace. They can. They do need the skill sets. They need the strength at home. They need supervision, but they also need the tools, the education. So we have vocational industrial schools out there that can offer great opportunities for young people. We've got teachers and mentors that want to step in and be of service. We've got not-for-profits that want to target those students, the young people with most needs, and get into their lives and turn those lives around. You know, there was an old saying years ago, shows how old I am, you know, the best thing to stop crime is a good job. I firmly believe that, and the best thing to show responsibility is a good job. Getting up, going to work, doing what you got to do. A lot of skill sets involved there, so we can do better there. We also can do better when it comes to housing. A lot of past policies with the best of intentions have undermined the nuclear family, and quite often in these households, there's no really good male role model. And we believe that we need to re-examine all of those things because in many respects, our current structure of laws sort of creates that unintentionally. Best of intentions in the early 70s, now we're seeing the result, unintended consequences, and we need to turn around, revisit these issues. Every kid, every person in Connecticut deserves to have a nice roof over their head, meals on the table, and a support structure. And to the extent our social policies do not enhance that or support that, and in fact have the effect of undermining that, we need to get our arms around that. And if there's a way to get good, responsible male role models into these family structures, one way or another, we should examine every opportunity to do that. The third area that we're focusing on is law enforcement. There was a lot of defund the police, protests against law enforcement saying that things went too far. And I would be the first to say that there were incidents where certain law enforcement officers went too far. Yes. But the reforms, they went too far as well. And now we have a situation where law enforcement, to some extent, feels that its hands are tied. They don't have the panoply of resources and methodologies that they need to use to get out there to battle crimes. These aren't young people just driving around neighborhoods saying that garage door is open. These are very smart individuals, perhaps an adult in charge of the gang, looking at Google Maps, targeting certain neighborhoods and saying, oh, those houses look really wealthy, bet you they have great cars, let's go steal some of those and then use them in other crimes. This is a thoughtful enterprise that law enforcement needs to get up to pace with. They need to be able to address high-speed chases if that is the decision by the officers engaged, and they can do it safely. Maybe the chiefs in that particular area say no. That's their decision, not ours. I'm not an expert on every nuance of law enforcement. But I feel, and my caucus feels, and my leadership feels, that right now we've cast a bucket of cold water on law enforcement, retirements in record numbers, and we don't have young people that are looking at it like a career that they really want to invest their lives in. That's terrible. The thin blue line, law enforcement, is a reality. And we're seeing that. And the last thing that I'd like to see is people feeling so frustrated and so hopeless that they have to always be vigilant and on their guard, and God forbid they're putting groceries in their car at 9 o'clock at night, or they forgot to lock their car in their driveway and the blame is on them. No, we need law enforcement rapidly going to issues where things have taken place. So we need to revisit those reforms and circle back. We need to make sure that a juvenile that commits a horrible crime can get moved into the adult court. So it's bringing everything together. It's a holistic approach, and I'm so proud to be a part of the Senate Republican caucus and all my colleagues. And at this point in time, I know that Senator Kelly and Senator Formica probably will answer some questions. But again, these things really should happen now, not yesterday. And while some of these will have to be addressed in the Judiciary Committee in the next legislative session, a lot of these things can take place right now. And the public demands it right now. And someone's life is hanging in the balance right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate that. And I'm just reconnecting. Whoever's mic fell down for a moment, so I hope that's better for whoever that was. So, you know, we broke it down, the proposal, into really the three areas that Senator Kissel spoke about. One is the response to crime. Currently, that's a short-term response looking at our criminal justice system. The second is prevention and opportunity. That's looking at more of the wraparound services, the economic issues, and how can we make sure that there are positive mentoring opportunities in the lives of youth, and also that they have a meaningful alternative to criminal behavior. Those are more of the wraparound services that we've discussed. And then the last is obviously giving our police and law enforcement officers the tools necessary to do the job. That's what they're asking for. You see that from the Waterbury chief, that he's asking us for the tools. Just giving more money and more officers is not enough. They need the tools to do the job. So just in concluding, every family, once again, every person deserves to live in a state where they're safe. What is currently happening in our state is not working, and there is a better way. This holistic plan is meant to move us closer to action. We welcome input. We want more conversations. We need to involve police, community leaders, prosecutors, public defenders, youth advocates, and social community stakeholders. We need to open communication and empower our community members to be part of the solution. Above all, we cannot settle for a quick fix and call it success. We have a call to action. We have an opportunity for change, and we believe that the youth of our state are worth fighting for. With that, well, I think we need to be more proactive, and I think the plan, if you look at the plan itself, it identifies fairly specifically what we would be looking at giving our police officers and law enforcement personnel what they need to do the job.
There's a lot here, right? You have more consequences, you have more prevention for law enforcement. Is there anything in here that you feel that will make it more palatable to those across the line?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think it's just all punitive. I think this is opportunity. What we've been presented with the events of the day is a need to refocus on this, because what the state of Connecticut is doing isn't working. We're having and experiencing more crime and more violent crime. So we have to address those issues first and foremost. And, you know, a couple of that is making sure that, you know, when somebody is apprehended, that they get before a judge and into the court system sooner rather than later. We bring services and supports that are necessary for that individual to encourage and create better opportunity for corrective behavior. So that's the short term. But in the long term, what we were talking about is identifying trauma, truancy, and making sure that mentorship and positive role models attached to these individuals. And that once that occurs, that they also have, and I'm going to say, a state that provides the opportunity. Right now, you know, our economy in Connecticut is really K-shaped. If you have a decent paying job, you're doing okay. But if you're on the lower or middle, low income perspectives, you're not doing well. And that's going to create more crime. So what we need to do is have actual alternatives that are meaningful, jobs and opportunities, so that people who have fallen through the cracks don't remain there, that they actually have an opportunity to perform. And we want to make sure they have that, because the Connecticut economy is not working for its people.
Are you packaging these up and putting them into a bill for a special session? Have you done that, or are you going to be packaging these up and putting it into a bill?
Yes, we're in the process of doing that and putting that together. The plan is obviously the first step in that process, but our staff, which has done a fantastic job at getting us to where we are today, we'll be working on the actual language to put this into action.
And have you talked to the governor at all about this?
We have shared the plan with leadership and the governor, and what we hope is that this is going to open up conversation and meaningful conversation with regards to this issue. I think it's long overdue because it's not just, I'm going to say, narrowly focused to a response to crime, but we got to look at this holistically.
I only see House, Senate Republican out here. Are House Republicans on board with this?
I've had the opportunity to speak with the House leadership, and they are supportive of the action.
Okay, are they joining you in a call for, is there a need for a special session before the regular legislative session?
Quite frankly, I thought we should have used the last special session for this. I mean, this is the true emergency that I think is facing Connecticut. This has innocent lives, individuals who are dying in our streets. We need to deal with this. This is an emergency.
The Democrats don't seem to agree with that. So, they don't see that this is a problem that needs to be addressed.
And that's disappointing. And I think it's failed leadership, quite frankly.
One of the
Every single life matters. And we shouldn't accept these results on a daily basis where we wake up and we see that teenagers are stabbed to death or shot, or you have a car theft, and thank God the kid that was sitting in the car seat, that this wasn't July. We can't, that's not acceptable. And I think as a government, we owe it to the people that we represent to do something about this. Just saying that we've allocated funding and there's nothing more we can do, I think is abdicating your leadership role. People, our constituents, are asking and demanding results. This is what we hear when we go back to our communities. I don't know what the Democrats hear, but I believe the people deserve this response. And we want to have the conversation because they deserve better.
One of the proposals is you say that it's very difficult to transfer serious juvenile cases. It's my understanding that all Class A and B felonies are automatic transfers to the juvenile court. Do I have that wrong? And what kind of cases are not being able to be transferred? Could you give me some examples?
Well, I think when we look at the transfer of youth to adult court, what we're looking at is making sure that when these individuals come in contact with the judicial system, that we get them the services that they need, okay? And if right now the youthful offender is more of a diversionary program that doesn't have the necessary services, that what we would like to see is that they get more in through the adult court system. Now, could we do more with the adult court system? Absolutely. I think there are some family services that are attached in the youthful area that aren't necessarily present in the adult. But I think what we need to do here is that when somebody enters into the system, that they get the necessary services so that they get corrective rehabilitation sooner rather than later.
Right, so I hear
You
your
want-
point on that, but I'm curious.
I just,
what kind
if I could just add something. One of the things we've heard time and time again is the two-part test, all right? So you have a group of crimes, the A and B felonies that are automatically referred, but then there's a whole slew, and I'm not going to list them off, but there's a whole group, right, that are very, very serious, but there's a two-pronged test that a judge would have to go through, he or she, if a prosecutor moved to have the case transferred, right? So one of them is that the underlying facts and crime are a very serious danger to society. And in a lot of these, no question, very, very serious. But the second prong is worded such that a court would have to find that it's in the best interest of the juvenile to transfer to adult court. And judges say, I can't imagine a circumstance where essentially throwing the book or having more serious consequences is going to be in the best interest of the child. It might be in the very best interest of justice and society, but it's difficult to meet that other prong, so it eviscerates, it undermines, it undercuts the ability to transfer that whole slew of very, very serious cases. So we have to revisit that second prong so that the courts have the ability to, if not discount it, at least weigh the seriousness of the charges and the underlying facts versus that other qualification, so that it's not an automatic not going to adult court. It's just worded in such a way that it makes it impossible for all of those serious crimes to ever get transferred.
What's your definition of serious, though? What are a few examples of those ones that you need a judge's discretion to change?
Personally, I think anything that would harm an individual or put a threat to an individual's safety. So I wouldn't necessarily need an assault per se. Serious stalking is every bit as serious. I mean, look at how we treat domestic violence crimes, and now extrapolate from that how we should address all crimes committed to innocent individuals. That would be my first sort of line. And you know, for us to sort of say an auto theft is not serious because it's property, that is the lifeblood of any individual getting to work, getting food. And it also, if someone goes into your yard, your home, your garage and steals something, probably the second biggest asset a person has other than their home, your sense of security in your own home has now been undermined. So I think all of those things, anything that hurts an individual's personal physicalness, mentality, feeling of safety and security, and also major possessions that they have that they're critical for going to work or feeding their family, I think all of those are very serious crimes, and we should not diminish it, and we should not be blaming victims.
So we all know the juvenile training school in Middletown shut down a while ago, and maybe 2 prison life or
Thank you.
whatever, but I guess my question is, do you think that there's enough places to put youth who maybe are walking that line and need those supports and that extra help, but also, you know, can't just go into a group home or whatever? Is there enough places to house these individuals?
I think that's a conversation that we need to have, is to look at what our infrastructure with regards to capabilities are. I think that's part of this process. So I don't think there's enough, but we need to have a conversation on that.
How realistic is it? Is this politics, or is this a serious proposal? Because you guys are basically asking the Democrats to undo some of the biggest pieces of criminal justice reform that they have passed in the last, 10 years. They have shown no inkling to do that, and as a matter of fact, they have said we're willing to talk, but we're not going to undo those very reforms that you're talking about. I mean, the police accountability bill. I mean, no Republican voted for it. Why should the Democrats make change as well?
Well, I think what we have to look at are what are the results in the streets. I think that's the real issue here, and I don't believe this is political, because if it were, we would have come out with this sooner, earlier in the summer. What we did was we rolled up our sleeves, and our staff did a fantastic job at reaching out, talking with stakeholders, and after speaking with those individuals who are in our communities dealing with this issue on a daily basis, these are the ideas and responses that we received. Okay, so what we see every day when we wake up and open the newspaper is yet another crime, another victim, another bold and brazen crime occurring. And we can't let that stand. We need to address this issue. And as I've said, this is an open invitation. We hope the Democrats take us up on this, and we sit down and look at what needs to be done so that we can return to a safer Connecticut.
Can you make a link to the increase in crime and the increase in juvenile crime to changes in civil liability, requiring people to report excessive use of force, decertification for bringing lack of confidence through your actions, undermining public confidence in law enforcement? How do those proposals, the enactment of those proposals, have anything to do with any increase in crime in Connecticut?
Well, I think when you hear what not only the police chiefs but rank and file officers are saying, they're asking for more tools. I mean, they know the individuals that are committing these crimes, and they know who they are, they know they exist, and yet they can't do anything because of the current environment.
I understand that. You have juvenile justice reforms. You want to change the pursuit policy. civil liability have to do with any increase in crime? The police officers and the police unions clearly didn't want it. But I'm not sure where the connection between those proposals and an increase in crime is.
Well, I think what you want are police officers who are proactive in their approach to law enforcement. And you want somebody that's not worried about losing everything they've worked for and ending up with a lawsuit because they responded to somebody's cry for help. And that's what we want to do, is that when somebody cries for help and dial 911, that there's an individual ready, willing, and able to assist them to show up. You don't want that individual double clutching, saying, wait a minute, I don't know if I want to go into this because I could end up with a lawsuit where I lose my home and everything I've worked for. So I think, you know, look, we pass laws all the time. I think we need to look at that and at times say, okay, maybe we went too far, and maybe we need to revisit that and do something, because it's obvious the police are asking for tools, and we have crime becoming and violent crime becoming far too prevalent in our communities.
Do you believe that the efforts to divert juveniles from the criminal justice system, like the juvenile review board, sending to YSBs, the diversionary programs that exist, are they fundamentally misguided, or have they just been poorly implemented?
I think it's probably more of the latter, poorly implemented, not enough services. You know, it's more of a diversionary program than a rehabilitative program, and looking at it, you know, in its totality, and how do we go about, and this is why we need to evaluate the services that the state has, is to make sure that their intended purpose is occurring, maybe what we're doing and have always been doing isn't working, and that what we need to do is redeploy the resources to make sure that the individuals that get into the system have a true opportunity for corrective behavior.
And do you believe that the financial and staffing resources that are available now, as well as the court capacity, can support the proposals we're putting forward?
I think we need to look at that. First you got to evaluate what we have and how they're being used, what's the commitment that we've made, and is that commitment being done right? But in the event the answer comes back no on that, then what we need to do is make safety a priority. Clearly it's not right now, and that needs to happen. And if that requires more, then we got to do that.
You're looking to bring more resources to police. I'm wondering if you have made any consideration towards providing more support for violent prevention groups that focus primarily on communities of color, especially because they're looking to nip those in the bud in terms of making sure that these youth have resources before they get down the path of possibly going towards crime.
Correct. This is a proposal that not only looks at more resources for law enforcement and criminal justice, and more resources within criminal justice for individuals, but also it looks at exactly what you're talking about. We're looking at safer and more affordable housing. We're looking at jobs and opportunity. We're looking at support systems so that individuals have a true and bona fide alternative to criminal activity, that they can go in one direction rather than ending up in this, you know, with a connection to the criminal justice system. So it's more complex, it's more holistic, and we're looking at not only dealing with the issues of today, but how do we avoid this and nip it in the bud, as you referred to. Good question.
Senator, in your proposal, you talk about transferring to adult court, and I'm just curious, lowering the age from 15 to 14 for certain crimes like murder, violent sexual assault, violent crimes involving firearms, what is the significance of the 1 year?
I think once again is we're looking at, you know, violent crimes, and looking at what can we do to make sure that A, that doesn't occur again, but B, more importantly, how to get services for that individual sooner. That's our understanding, is that it does in dealing with those individuals.
Do you think car thefts fall under that?
I think it would depend upon whether it's, I'm going to say, if if it's an individual who's just doing something in a joyride situation versus somebody who's stealing a vehicle in the commission of another crime.
You have it here that when they're transferred to adult court, provide transfer cases with greater confidentiality. Can you flesh that out a bit? Do you mean them not being open to the public, or I thought there was a Supreme Court case that said that can't happen?
No, what we're looking at there is that what we want to do is not look at the transfer as a step back or I'm going to say a penalty to the youthful offender. What we're looking for are better services, okay? So what you want to do is make sure that the protections that are available to individuals in the youthful offender docket continue to stay attached to that individual even though they're in adult court. This isn't a punitive response, it's more of I'm going to say a human service response, because that's where most of the services that could benefit the individual are housed.
Could someone explain a little bit about this Section 8 proposal? Not getting at family relationships. I mean, I'm not.
Sure. I mean, once again, we're trying to look at this in a total perspective, and it's recognized that if we want to get individuals on the right path, what they need are positive role models and mentors in their life. Many times, because of the way the housing rules are set up, that you have a family unit, that if you had another adult come into the house, you may risk losing the benefits of housing. And so what we wanted to do, and we think this traces back to the days when Section 8 was created, and you had programs like Aid to Families with Dependent Children, where you had to not only have an income and asset, a means test, but there had to be a parent out of the house. Well, in the 90s, we changed that with TANF. We got rid of that parental requirement, but I think there's other programs like Section 8 where that hasn't been brought up to speed, brought up to current standards. So let's not look at this as just a single parent household, but if there's another positive role model, we want that individual to be present in the family's life and to be that mentor that would then give the kids of that house a better opportunity to succeed. So that's what we're driving at.
I know this is. Have you had an opportunity to price anything this out? Are there price tags attached to any of these proposals?
I'm sure there's price tags
No,
attached to all these
I was just
proposals.
asking if you guys may have looked into that aspect.
First things
Or you haven't
first.
gotten that far.
We haven't gotten that far. First things first, we wanted to come out with this. We'll have a conversation, no doubt, on that point. But I think, as I said before, these are worth fighting for, and I think this is something that we owe the people of Connecticut.
Comment on, you sent a statement out yesterday in regards to Representative Galston's comments. And over the weekend, you made the comment to double down. Minority Leader Vinnie Candelora defended. And Hitler has been mentioned in other circumstances, he's not the first. But I'd just like to get you on record about people using Hitler as a reference to describe other people.
Look, Hitler was pure evil. And it's insensitive to individuals, survivors, when you use that reference. I think he demonstrates that evil exists in our world. And I really think what we need to look at when we do have public discourse is keeping in the back of our minds that it needs to be civil. I think that is the one thing here that is most unfortunate, is that we need civil discourse. I think that's the exceptionalism of America, is that we have this right to free speech. We have a right to say what's on our mind. But in the process, I think what we need to do, because diversity is our strength, is to be understanding and tolerant of all perspectives in the process, and to make sure that that happens. You know, so that's, I guess. Thank you very much.